What did a German veteran tell you about World War II? Alfred Genat of Hildesheim, the son of an active member of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, joined the Jungfolk as early as 1932. He later received a Hitler Youth Gold Badge as an old fighter who joined the organization before the Nazis came to power. Genat recalls his time in the Hitler Youth as the best period of his life, noting the camaraderie, lack of class distinctions, camping trips, evenings out, and sporting events. In late 1941, the Hitler Youth put up a poster recruiting young men born in 1923 to join the Waffen-SS. Genat passed the medical examination together with 200 other boys, of whom only 27 were selected. He was drafted in 1942. The training was very hard. Night marches of 25 kilometers, meager food and other trials. On October 15, 1942, the recruits were sent to France in a freight car where apples had been transported earlier. After eating the leftover fruit and drinking water from the locomotive, everyone fell ill with dysentery. In France, Alfred Genat was trained on light 75mm and heavy 150mm infantry guns. He recalls that instead of tractors, the guns were moved by the soldiers themselves, especially heavy with the 150mm guns. This was done intentionally to physically strengthen the soldiers. At first, there were rumors about the transfer to Africa for the offensive on Alexandria. However, the equipment was suddenly repainted white, and the echelon headed for Russia, towards Stalingrad. Genat rode in winter on the last open platform, guarding a 150mm gun. It was very cold, and the field kitchen was in the first carriage, where he could only get in once during the whole trip. At Rysov station on the Polish-Russian border, Genat saw a field kitchen with soup just 3 tracks away. He ran to get food, but an ambulance train passed between the kitchen and the echelon. When it passed, Genat's echelon had already left. Left alone, half-dressed, without a belt and with a bowl of noodles, Genat headed for the train station. There he was informed of the imminent arrival of a tank train that would not stop. The soldier had to jump on the move. Then his journey continued on a freight train, a platform with anti-aircraft guns, and a passenger train. Near Poltava, Genat finally found his unit, was reprimanded, and gave himself the word not to go further than 3 meters away from the company. If he had known what lay ahead, he would have paid no attention to the displeasure of his superiors, nor to the unfortunate noodles. By the time they got there, the Battle of Stalingrad had already ended. Part of the Genat was transferred to Kharkov, which was soon taken. From there they were sent to Belgorod, where the offensive stopped. After heavy losses, the unit was taken to the rear for rest and replenishment. Alfred Genat, having been on leave in his native Hildesheim, was trained at the School of Non-Commissioned Officers in Breslau-Lisa. Returning to the company as a gun commander, he faced the harsh reality of the retreat. From Krivoy Rog further and further west. During the retreat, Genat's gun collided with an assault gun commanded by a Knight's Cross Knight. Both machines had to be destroyed. By this point, only the commander and 2 to 3 soldiers remained of Genat's company, which vividly illustrates the extent of the losses. The soldiers suffered from lice. After withdrawal from the fighting in Moldavia, they showed ingenuity. From a 200-liter gasoline barrel built a makeshift steam room, and clothes fried on the barrel of a machine gun. In July 1944, Alfred Genat was sent to Warsaw for officer candidate courses and then to the Junkers School in Prague. In October, he was transferred to Breslau-Lisa to form new companies in a reserve battalion. However, upon arrival, it became clear that there were no cannons and were not expected, so the artillerymen were sent on leave. Genat was faced with a choice to go to his parents in Hildesheim or to his fiancée, who served in the Kriegsmarine in St. Blasien. Fate decided the Anglo-American air raid on the railroad junction in Erfurt. After the bombing, train traffic stopped, but soon announced a train to Mainz. This determined Genat's choice. He went to his fiancée. The last 50 kilometers of the journey had to be overcome on foot in the rain with snow. In Saint-Blasien, Genat smiled at luck. He was put on the allowance in the Kriegsmarine and was given 30 cadet ski huntsmen. As the front approached, they were sent to defend the Oder near Orest, where many refugees with wagons, livestock, Old men, women and children had piled up. Occupying a well-fortified bunker with MG machine guns, they soon encountered Russian troops attempting to force the river by boat. The first attempt was repulsed, but the enemy soon broke through the defenses on the left flank. Having received orders to retreat to Breslau, Gennat and his detachment found themselves in a city filled mostly with Volkssturm soldiers. They were assigned to defend the Gandau airport in the Schmiedefeld district. This part of the city was held for a long time, and U-52s constantly flew to the airport, delivering ammunition and evacuating the wounded. Fierce clashes broke out on Frankfurt Street, one of the longest streets in the city. At the intersection with Piorstrasse, where the railroad embankment passed, the Volkssturm held the defense. The Russians managed to capture 3 houses behind the embankment. Gennat, with a detachment of 10 men, was ordered to knock the enemy out of these buildings. The operation succeeded, although at the cost of losing 1 fighter. As a trophy, the Germans got a Russian anti-tank gun. A particularly fierce battle was fought over Iwerk 41, a large-scale 2-story bunker complex. This powerful fortification with concrete walls, casemates and galleries was skillfully camouflaged by trees and bushes. Despite the efforts of the Wehrmacht unit defending the site, the Russians managed to capture almost the entire complex. Only in the largest bunker the remnants of the German garrison continued to resist. The order came to de-block the large bunker of Iwerk 41. The German forces attacked using hand grenades and panzerfausts. Twice they retreated into the main bunker, calling their artillery fire on themselves. At the cost of losing most of the company, only 27 men remained. They managed to accomplish the objective. Despite the encirclement, Breslau continued to resist due to its large food supply and the availability of rear units. On March 30th, Gennat received a shrapnel wound. He was operated on in the field without anesthesia. After 24 hours of recovery, he returned to his position. On April 21st, a second wound followed, sending him to the hospital for the rest of the fighting. On May 3rd, the defenders of Breslau made an unsuccessful breakthrough attempt, and on May 6th, the city capitulated. After the war, Breslau, the capital of Silesia, was handed over to Poland. The Poles quickly evicted the German population and the city became Wrocław. The German soldiers surrendered and were encamped in a field camp. Gennat was amazed at the behavior of the Austrians, who suddenly disassociated themselves from the Germans, refusing even to communicate with them. All the prisoners were searched, many of their belongings were confiscated, and after a medical examination they were assigned to work groups. The German prisoners were first sent to work at a brick factory, then to a collective farm. Later they were transferred to Chistiakovo to work in a coal mine. Unexpectedly, an announcement was made about the transfer of the SS soldiers to a regime camp, which was supposedly the best in the district. The prisoners took it as a mockery, but the reality turned out to be different. Gennat recalls, "We came to this camp and didn't even realize it was a camp. It looked like a normal residential neighborhood, with curtains on the windows and pots of flowers. To their surprise, they were met by the German commandant of the camp, an SS Hauptsturmführer. After a short conversation about belonging to the Totenkopf division, they were assigned to blocks. We were back at our place, the SS. It was the best camp in all my more than 4 years in Russian captivity," Gennat notes. The former SS men worked in a mine located just 150 meters from the camp. After their shift, a Russian shift would take over. Surprisingly, there were no guards. Moreover, the prisoners participated in socialist competitions with Soviet miners and even won. And now here's the sensation. "We received wages as much as the Russians. I repeat, we were getting as much as the Russians, and even more because we worked much harder than they did. And the money came to our account," Gennat excitedly shares. He specifies, "True, we couldn't withdraw all the money and we had to transfer 456 rubles from our accounts for our expenses in the camp." In 1948, when rumors of an imminent return home were already circulating, Gennat was transferred to another camp. He worked at a huge factory in Dnepropetrovsk, equipped with machine tools from Germany. Gennat notes a surprising paradox in the attitude toward resources. It was surprising that the Russians treated materials very wastefully. For example, if concrete was brought in shortly before the end of the working day, it was simply left lying there until tomorrow, and it hardened. After that, it was broken with crowbars and thrown away. On December 16, 1949, the order to pack up and go home suddenly sounded. Gennat prepared himself thoroughly, buying 2 large wooden suitcases and stocking up on cigarettes, vodka and tea. The column of prisoners marched through Dnepropetrovsk to German soldiers' songs on the orders of the Russian commandant of the camp, who took obvious pleasure in it. At the train station, freight cars equipped with stoves and supplied with firewood and food were waiting for them. Upon arrival in Frankfurt am Oder, an unexpected sight awaited the former prisoners. Local children were asking them for bread and railroad workers for cigarettes. This showed the difficult economic situation of post-war Germany. A tragic incident occurred already in West Germany, in Friedland. The former prisoners of war massacred an anti-fascist whistleblower who sent many of them to punishment camps. The perpetrators were detained by the police. Returning home to Hildesheim, Gennat found that the British had confiscated many valuable items from his parents' house, but this seemed like a small thing. With the help of his uncle, he took a job as a machine fitter, gradually rising to foreman.